How do cats speak and what do they talk about? I made this game to find out. In this video I'm going to guide you through my process, showing how I try to stay constrained in game jams, while at the same time trying to pursue my big game project. So if you're interested in game development, stick around. I hope you will find these ideas useful. I just really want to talk about the weird things I make, so they're not that weird anymore. Two were my big constraints. First, follow the rules of the game jam to stay committed and motivated. Second, to expand my existing game universe and ideas, hitting two birds in one stone. I find working with these two constraints at the same time keeps my project contained, gives extra spiciness to the game, but also my work is more meaningful, simultaneously progressing towards my big game project. So let's see these two constraints, which I switch between when I'm stuck or need inspiration. Let's start with the first one. A game jam is GDKO where all the developers compete against each other to progress through rounds. This is round 1. The theme is to make a core mechanic and a secondary mechanic that will help progress the game. You will see how I juggle with the two mechanics, which one is which. Until the end I wasn't quite sure. Even now I'm not quite sure, but don't tell that to the other people. My problem started with which mechanics to use. Card games are always very alluring for me, with all the uncertainty before flipping a card, the mystery, the way the cards interact with one another, creating system. But while I wanted to make something new, I didn't want to move that far away from my comfort zone. I only have a limited amount of time to work on these projects after all, and have to be more careful with my effort. Here is where I switch to my second constraint. How will this project fit and contribute to my game world? Briefly, I'm making a game about cats in sewers. There is no energy down there, except the cats. They are highly energetic and highly volatile. There is this machine I have made that takes in cats and turns them into energy. But I want to add a final step in the process. After completing all the machine minigames, I want to add a way players can seal in the cats to have a final interaction registering the creatures, biblically giving them name. Each name carries mathematical meaning referencing the energy it contains, literally enforcing the fact that cats carry mathematical information. So I had found my aim to make this mechanic, this player interaction at the end of the machine, sealing in the cats. Now back to the jam. Which core and secondary mechanic would be ideal for this task? My first thought was a drawing mechanic, maybe like a pattern players could write with their mouse, like handwriting the number names of the cats on the screen. Super nice idea, would fit both my constraints and would be easy to find a secondary mechanic to accompany this. Hearing noises is what I have written here. Progressing would happen by learning to draw each cat symbol. Now, first spoiler warning, if you're curious how it progresses, go play it now. It should be a few quick minutes. If you get stuck, come back to get more hints. Inspired by cats carry mathematical meaning and exploring this deeper, I wanted each sound to correspond to how a digit looks like. For example, meow, a straight line downwards, or a longer mew for the curve on the number 2. And then mew is 2 curves, making the number 3, and so on. More complex could be 4, as there are a few ways of drawing that. I want to stay simple with the shapes and sounds so as to not add complexity, neither for the player nor for myself to code. So 6, not like a squirrel, but almost like a lowercase b, a line and a circle. Hiss and whistling sounds could be it, that circle thingy. Same with 8. I could go for 2 curves and then 2 curves backwards towards the top, or I can just copy the way I wrote 8 during primary school. 2 circles, so like 2 hisses. Hissing twice for 8 is perfect, so I could vent my many hours and years of humanity's collective frustration trying to learn how to write 8 in one go. Still creatively on fire at this stage, I wonder how could this sound system would allow for double digits. Perhaps inhaling, or another sound the cats make that would signify to players that a digit is done and then the next one comes after. All seemed to be going great. I had a system I loved, it blended nicely with my two constraints. But then I could no longer ignore the big problem. How will I actually code this? I could probably find a way to do the drawing mechanic. A quick search showed me some tutorials, but how to check if the symbol players are drawing are correct? I knew I was going to have trouble with that. Anyway, back to ideas. Drawing and exploring cat symbols made my brain think about drawing in the sand, so drawing in a litter box sounded like a cool idea. Feline literature was the pun title I came up with.
My wife.
And I was very proud of myself.
My wife.
To make the game more accessible for people who frankly had enough of the cat noises and understandably had turned off the volume, I wanted to have a visual indication of each sound. But because I get lost in animating and drawing during these game jams, I just wanted clear, simple portraits that would communicate the symbols. I was then exploring how the symbols would look like in the sand. After many obscure games I've made, I learned that I get a bit too lost in my thinking, so I had to really focus this time and plan for a bit of hand-holding, especially at the start. You see, in my brain it all makes sense, but I need to work out a bit more how to communicate this with players that unfortunately don't fit all in my head. A small mini-game would work as a tutorial, I think, with one cat and 3 possible symbols. You click into one, and then the wrong ones would disappear on the sand. Here you see how I was considering direction as an extra hint. Drawing numbers 5, for example, I start from the right to the left, while number 2 ends from left to right. So I was thinking of going ooh, ooh, to show the different directions. I had played Tunic recently and I was awestruck by the rune writing system, as you can tell. So I was going to also unapologetically make my game with a few bits here and there to account for spoken word, special handwriting styles, and not necessarily one-to-one correlations between the sounds, symbols, and the digits. With the problem of how to check if players were correct in their own writing, and me sucking at code and not having enough time to invest to learn better, plus the fact that my game only deals with numbers, made me think about this digital representation. Like some clocks, calculators, or other retro displays, I could use this system of 7 nodes to create my own cat digits. This would serve as the middle ground that would allow players to make their own connections between cat sounds, symbols, and mathematical meaning. Especially since I assume everyone would have experienced such visual representations of number at least once at this point, with all the alarm clocks and bomb countdowns in movies. But what would be even better for me was if there could be a way to check if players understood my idea, just by clicking and unclicking the 7 nodes to form digits. This would also allow for degrees of success and giving hints if players were close to a number. Because the sand symbols were a bit wishy-washy, I had made the choice to keep the set of symbols small, plus the fact that you and I draw the same digit in many different ways. For example, my 8 versus the hiss sound we were discussing before. This would be a nice training ground for everyone to be happy using the calculators. Here I explored how each symbol could be and what are the degrees of success I wish to accommodate for. This process led me to add a long meow for a straight line on 1 or 7 to avoid repetition and possible mistakes, instead of using the small meow meows, for example. It became clear, based on how I designed my symbols, that some digits would be very easy to draw, like 1 and 7, while others could get highly complex, like 2, 4, or 6. I called this machine the calculator and kept referring it to as such. I was still unsure if I was going to be one calculator for one digit, or it would have to be each digit its own calculator, if that makes sense. Then I was thinking about level design. Should it all be in one screen? How can I fit all the symbols in one screen? And how will players clearly distinguish between the two mechanics, the spoken and written word? Would everyone understand that these are distinct mechanics, or will they hit me in the comments and their scoring and vote me out of the competition because I failed to communicate that? See, we're all back to the constraint. One idea was the conch of speech. If you drag it on a cat, it will speak. So this way, I could avoid trigger-happy players that would spawn a cacophony of cat noises and make the game unplayable. The other idea was to join cats to do mathematics. This was when cat arithmetic literature came to be. My logic is, if one pun goes unnoticed, make them 2, just to be sure. This way the name works as a hint, so hopefully people will get what I'm aiming for a bit more. You can see how I had distinguished 3 locations here. First, the letterbox, where you learn the symbols. It's like the tutorial. The cats here will be covered in sand, that's why they can't move, so players can do math with them. There would be baby cats that could speak just parts of the digits. Then progression. Remember, we need to win the game jam. So that means the digital writing space. I was thinking here metal cats would exist, speaking slightly computerized. This would be an issue, of course, adding an unnecessary level of complexity, perhaps, that both players and me, coding-wise, could do without. You see here how I was even thinking of another complexity, like metal math cats, portraits, to light up based on the symbols, not now on sand, but also giving hints as to what parts of the digit they should be clicking at. Anyway, these metal cats would be also heavy, bolted on the floor next to their screens, each one shouting one of the 9 digits. Writing the scripts, I realized I could also have a 9 lives pun somewhere here, but I missed that chance. Finally, the end challenge. To fit all problems in there, I was thinking of bushes or trees you could click and the cats would come out. Each bush would need a specific number you had to add or subtract the cats to get to. This would solve my camera issue of fitting everything in, because I really hate in games when you learn a pattern or see a sign and then have to backtrack or make a note on paper to find which pattern it was you needed for a puzzle. Of course, don't get me wrong, some really do it well and I enjoy those, but in general, let's see if I can avoid this for this game jam. Oh yeah, wildcats, these are the ones you could drag around. You can also see how I was thinking of areas you could drag your conch around to move the camera between these 2-3 sections of the game. I was thinking to show progression, the player had to have access to what could be, what the aim was, to understand the language so to solve the problem. So going into and having the choice to play around immediately with the final task early was crucial. Like a Dark Souls style, you can reach bad guys, probably you will lose to, very early, but at least it will make you feel a lot better when you beat them. Because progression wouldn't exist if they were unaware of the end goal basically. So let's see if I managed to pull this off in the end. To escape the issue of fitting things in one screen, I later on decided to look into magic squares. These are squares of numbers that have weird properties. For example, each row and column add up to the same number or make weird patterns all across. This magic square was perfect for me as it used all 9 digits at once, meaning I could make this easy for players by giving them one digit, once. And also the magic number was 15, which was manageable, not needing complex operations or mental calculations to reach it. Through development, I tried to actually code the whole square, like the magic square, but I didn't manage to include it in the endgame, and it still doesn't work, so let's leave it at that. I was happy I managed to fit a quick stream during development here on YouTube. I wanted to do more, to capture more of the cats, the sand, the metal wildcats, and draw on the backgrounds or symbols on stream, but unfortunately I couldn't. I ended up using all the art drawn that day, and only that, unfortunately. This led me to compromising with these weird cat amalgamations which you could drag around. This narratively is kind of flawed in my game world. I wanted them to be more consistent with what I'm imagining, but I suppose it works, so it's enough for this game jam. In terms of coding this, I just quickly want to share a few moments and practices that I developed. It was super fun to code the interactions between the written and spoken cat words. I ended up having this chunk that I would copy-paste everywhere so I don't get confused between the different systems. You can imagine I was mumbling all the time, meow, 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 hiss, hiss, and so on, or 0 top, 1L, 2 mid, and so on. I had also some nice bugs where the cats could be activated just when I was scrolling over them. Also, I don't know about you, but I always think, there could be a more efficient way to do this. There's probably some slick algorithm to do the same thing. And I wish I knew how to repeat this over and over without actually writing it. This round, I had a long if statements to control when the calculator would change into different colors. And because I program rarely throughout the year, I decided to make a script on my desktop to paste cool bits of code I've written or stolen from the internet throughout the years. These are things like how to use a timer in Godot, call functions from a parent node, and so on. And with that, we reach the end of the video. I hope I make it to the next round to make another video and see you all soon. If you want to support me, please subscribe to see when the next video is out. Comment on what you might be curious about so I can mention it in the future. Plus, if you want some sick sprites, check the link for some sweet and juicy animations. See you next time.